Valentine's Day has, I don't know, made people to, switch their attention to somewhere else. So, but anyway, we will be having our session as usual with the same enthusiasm, Madhushree, and we'll be recording your session, and it will be, listened by all the students on our Biodiversity Club YouTube channel, which is we are starting soon. Soon means it's in the process. So in a few days it will be starting, and we'll be uploading all our videos on that. So, Madhushree, I welcome you also formally, officially. Dhanush will introduce you, welcome you to our members. But let me welcome you to our Biodiversity Club and introduce you what we are doing since. So, Biodiversity Club of the university has started in 2018. And before that, we have started working on our book, Symbiosis, Fauna of Symbiosis International University. Book got published, and we thought that we should work on conservation and education awareness also. And we convinced management that we should have a separate biodiversity cell where we should continuously work on documentation, education awareness, and especially conservation of habitats and species. And so Biodiversity Club came into existence in 2018. Now there are students from across various programs and institutes in Symbiosis. So you will be interacting with the students from law, from management, media, geoinformatics, culinary arts, then health science. It's a varied group, and but they are doing very good job since they are part of this biodiversity club, and they are getting exposed to experts like you. So with this, I welcome you for today's session. We are really looking forward to know what you want to say about amphibians, frogs, and especially the dancing frog you are working with, and the community and conservation aspects of amphibians. So please, Dhanush, you can go ahead, and then all the platform will be Madhushree.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning to everyone present here. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all for another Sunday special session. Like every other Sunday, today we are going to welcome Madhushree Mudke, who explores forests of Western Ghats to study frogs. She has been extensively studying Microsalus cotangeris, the common name of dancing frog, and she is currently pursuing her PhD in assessing the impacts of anthropogenic activities on amphibian communities in southwestern India. And we hope all of you have a very interesting session, and we can begin.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, Madhushree.
Okay. Um, yeah. So I'll just be starting with giving you guys a little bit of my introduction, and then working towards like basically general idea of what amphibians are, what are their roles in the ecosystem, or in the habitat or the environment. If the talk gets too scientific, just let me know so I can narrow it down for you, because there are people from diverse backgrounds. So you might have different understandings of the terms that we use. And that's okay. And you can stop me anytime you want. So just maybe raise your hand,
Okay.
whatever you have to do on Zoom, so that I know that. Okay. Usually in my talks, there are like a lot of fun activities, but we can't do them, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. So let's see how much, how fun this goes. So I'll just start with a little bit of my introduction. And earlier I used to work in a medical college, and it really didn't go well for me. So I thought I'll just probably, make a switch and do what I like doing, which is roaming the forest. But it doesn't go as you imagine it to go. But that's like the rule of life. So what happened was that I thought I'll like just explore what Indian ecosystems are, what are the forests we have in India, because back in 2014, 2013, when I was trying to make a switch, like there was climate change and there were biodiversity losses as well, but it wasn't as common as you see today. Like today, even if you put it on your Instagram or any of your social media, you often find something that is going on because of climate change. But back in 2012, everyone was really exploring what social media was and what these things are. So at the time it was not really easy to make the switch, but still things did go my way. And I thought that amphibians are a really interesting taxa that I could spend my time on, because they were almost everywhere. And as children, I think we do have some form of a familiarity with amphibians, and that's because you have found tadpoles or frogs in your childhood somewhere in your room, or maybe in a pond near you. So I thought that would be interesting to study. And also I figured that there is very little information on amphibians, especially in developing countries, in tropical countries. So as a researcher, I thought it would be an interesting task to actually look at a place where there is very little information available. So then you have more things to do, and obviously more options. So that was one of the reasons why I chose to study frogs. So currently, like I was introduced, I am currently pursuing my PhD with A3 in Bangalore, and I'm also a Zoological Society of London's Edge Fellow. This is a program where we look at evolutionary distinct and globally endangered species, and one of these species is the dancing frog that we are going to talk about in today's talk. So. Also at the end of the talk, I feel like one of the things that we could achieve is that I could convince you possibly that why I love frogs and why you should too, because we all live in an ecosystem where there are plenty of frogs and none of us know anything about them. So one of the major things about amphibians and frogs particularly is that if there are no frogs, we are going to live in a reality that looks like this poster over here. So the thing with amphibians is that they feed on pests, things that we don't like your mosquitoes and your mosquito larvae and ants and all the other things that most people end up hating in their houses or in their backyards. So these they sort of help in controlling the population of these pests. And if there is no control for populations, for these pest populations, then we are in a way in a trouble. And there have been plenty of studies which show that we have increased the use of our pesticides, even economically, if you look at it in terms of monetary value that we spend on pesticides, versus if we just had proper functioning ecosystems, we would definitely have it easier on the economical part of the amount of money that we are spending on a particular pesticide. So these were the posters that were made some years back to create awareness of the importance of amphibians in the ecosystem that we live in. So the thing with frogs is that they are a very integral part of the food chain, and this is one of the simplest sort of a food chain that I could find. And it shows that frogs are sort of in the center of the food chain. So if they are not there, the food chain cannot function as it's supposed to function. So the things that you don't like your pests or your tiny insects that frogs feed on, and then frogs are fed on by larger herptiles like the snakes and birds. And often things that are eating frogs are things that we absolutely love. That is the right hand side of the food chain. The birds, for example, birds are really popular among nature lovers. So if like sort of their food goes missing, we know that they will eventually end up being in a problem. So that's another important aspect of frogs, and that was the reason why those kind of posters were made, because they really are at the base of the food chain, but they're also a very integral and a central part of the food chain. This is a video of a particular tadpole. And I'm aware that Symbiosis is also on on a form of a lateritic plateaus, and that you also see a lot of seasonal changes on the plateau where the university is, I think, and even on the outskirts of Pune, I think there are a lot of lateritic plateaus. So this video that you just saw is of a tadpole. It is of a frog called the laterite narrowmouth frog, or what we call it as Microhyla laterite. So it was found from the lateritic plateaus of of Karnataka, and that is the tadpole of this particular frog. And what you see is that it's swimming in a clear pool that is formed on the lateritic plateaus only in the season of monsoons. So for the 6 months of monsoon that we have on the plateau, these freshwater pools are formed, and the frog sort of completes one part of its survival. It breeds, it lays eggs, and then forms these tadpoles, which grow into tiny froglets, which will stay alive in the coming year to finish their own survival cycle as well. So these are the frogs that you find on the lateritic plateaus. And one of the major roles that tadpoles play, the tadpoles play, is that they eat away all the moss and algae that grows in such pools where you have stagnant water. So you must be knowing that we do not often think that algae growing in on fresh water or stagnant water is a good idea. And for that, you could read further, or probably we could discuss later, but we want the pools to stay as clear and in balance as possible. So we do not want excess algae growth, we do not want excess moss growing on the rocks, and these tadpoles help in preventing that bit of the freshwater pool by feeding on the mosses and on the algae that grows in the stagnant water. So there are two phases in a frog's life. One is the tadpole phase, and the other one is the adult phase, which you often find, the one with four limbs. So the tadpole phase also helps in playing a very important role in the ecosystem by feeding on the algae. So by maintaining the freshwater ecosystems that are around us. And the adult phase also again plays a very important role by controlling the amount of pests that are there in the ecosystem. So they might not necessarily be something that are very aesthetic in their presence. They might have big eyes and weird looking skin, and sometimes they're also very slimy, but they are still very important and very integral part of a particular ecosystem. And I think that is one of the reasons why they are very important to us, and it's very important that public knows about what's happening with them. So in India particularly, we have like a range of weird looking tadpoles, and the one that you see on the right hand side over here, these are black. I know that you can see them as like dark tadpoles, but they are this big in size, and they grow even bigger at times. And these are, I think, the biggest tadpoles that we have documented in India. They are of this frog called the bicolored frog, or Clinotarsus, and they stay in particular fresh water for a really long time, like probably even a year or two. And the one that you see on the left hand side is one of my favorite tadpoles ever, because it's one of its kind, and then you find them everywhere around in India. But if you ask a layperson, he would probably never know that this kind of a tadpole exists. So this is a tadpole that doesn't swim as other tadpoles do, so it doesn't live in a pool, but it lives on like moist surfaces. So if the tadpole is there, especially in your campus, I think you should probably be seeing this tadpole. If you just run your hands over moist lateritic plateaus or moist rocks, then you'd probably see them jumping around. So they're that camouflaged, and you can't probably see them very easily on lateritic formations or even on moist rocks. And they spend most of their lives feeding on the algae that grows on moist rocks, and it's absolutely beautiful to see them as well. And these
Which
tadpoles,
frog is this, Madhushree?
yeah, so this tadpole is of the genus Indirana. And Indiranas are basically old world frogs, which means that they do not breed the same way as the dancing frog breeds, or
Mhm.
even your, tree frog breeds, for example. They have something called as an inguinal amplexus, which is a very old way of amplecting, and it's sort of a disadvantage. So you do not find that many tadpoles. You do not find that their way of survival is something that is, is similar to that of modern frogs.
Can
So
you tell them about amplex or amplating, this word we are using?
amplexus is basically a, a coital position. So I'll just explain that when we talk about the dancing frog,
Okay.
because there's that photo over there. So I think
Okay.
it'd be easier for them to imagine what amplexus is. But it's basically just just a coital position that's taken by amphibians before they lay eggs. So it's a breeding position. Uh, yeah, so let's jump into other aspects of frogs and why. Some of the other reasons why I think people hate frogs is because most of them think that they are poisonous. And I want you to like switch on your mics probably and tell me whether you think the two frogs that you are seeing on the screen are poisonous or not. Just use like your common sense or like things that you must have learned in the past or whatever. Like, just
I
tell
think the
me.
one on the right can be poisonous.
The orange one.
Yeah,
Okay. And what about the blue one?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Any other
Any other
person?
answers?
I think
And
blue one is poisonous.
Excuse me, ma'am. I've heard that brightly colored frogs are usually poisonous. So maybe the one that's blue in color, I guess either both of them are poisonous or the one that's blue in color because it's bright in color.
okay, that does make sense, right? But this is also bright enough, like it's orange.
Yeah, but I'm not pretty sure, but I just have heard that fact that the colors, bright colors are usually, frogs with bright colors are usually poisonous.
Yeah, yeah. So there is some truth to that. Okay. And I think someone said that the blue one is not really poisonous, but the blue one is among the most poisonous frogs that we have in the world. And a long time back, there was this tribe that used to hunt monkeys on the canopy by using the poison of this particular frog. So they would, take the frog, rub it on the arrowhead, and then shoot the the monkey in the canopy, and the monkey would fall straight down because that's how potent the poison is of this particular frog. And they're called the poison frogs for that reason. So there's like a whole family of poison frogs that live in the world, but fortunately or unfortunately, they're not found in India, so we don't have to worry about it. Um and these frogs are basically, if you touch the frog and then you lick it, then you might die, or you might actually not die, just suffer a little mild stroke. But the thing is that they secrete some form of a secretion that is on their skin, which causes an issue with the nervous system of a mammal or of any primate, and that's the reason why the monkey falls straight down from the canopy. And it has been used extensively by the tribes for hunting and other reasons. Whereas the frog that you see on the orange frog over here on the right hand side is the frog that is found in India. And it's a fungoid frog. And I guess you must have seen a similar frog in your campus as well. But it also is kind of slimy, but this one is a non poisonous frog. At least what we know, that it doesn't cause any form of reaction to anyone, maybe to like the things that eat it, but we are not aware of it. And even if you hold it with your hands, it's not going to cause any difficulty as far as we know. So frogs are really deceptive animals. You might, unless you have proper information of any given frog, it's, I think, a good idea to keep in mind that brightly colored things and things that really look good are both dangerous. So let's look at this one. Now, who's going to tell me if this is a poisonous frog or not a poisonous frog?
It seems
It's very dark in color, so I guess it's poisonous.
Yeah. So this, again, like I said, the coloring is really deceptive and we do not know. And like you can see that somebody is anyways handling the frog without wearing gloves. But this frog is called a torrent toad, and you often find it on these freshwater flowing streams. It's usually sitting on the rock, similar to what the dancing frog also does. But what this frog does is that when it senses any form of danger around it, it sort of jumps in the stream and flows like this ulta, showing off its belly. So in the front it's really just dark black. You can't even tell if there's a frog sitting on a rock or not. But when it swims like that ulta in the stream, you can see all these bright coloration, and this coloration is used to signal predators that, hey, I might be dangerous, you don't want to eat me. So the colors in the frog are really deceptive, but it's not really poisonous to human beings or anything. So the take home message is that in India, we do not find a lot of poisonous frogs, which is a good thing and a bad thing both. It could also mean that we do not have enough scientific studies that tell us that there are poisonous frogs in India. But as far as taxonomy is concerned, we are pretty much good at it. And we do know that we haven't found any such poisonous substances, at least not as poisonous as the actual poison frogs of the world. So we do have brightly colored frogs, but we do not really have too many poisonous frogs. So there's nothing to be scared of. But yeah, it's always good to maintain distance. And why it's good to maintain distance, I'm going to tell you in a couple of other slides. The other interesting facet about amphibians, I think, is the fact that they are facing extinction. They are the vertebrates that are facing extinction the fastest. So they are basically species that walk on the planet, and they have declined by almost 80% since the last 4 decades, since we started recording them. And they have had massive wipeouts across the globe because of different reasons, like land use, land cover changes, because of a disease that was very common, which was also linked to climate change. So, and also to pet trade. So this is one of the interesting things about amphibians, is that first, nobody's interested in them, and second, that they're facing threats because of anthropogenic pressures, or man-made pressures that are going on in the globe today. So there are almost like 27% of animals that live outside of the protected area, which means that they're not necessarily protected by any of the protected area boundaries that we have. And outside of the protected area, as you already know, that there's rampant development going on, especially in developing countries. And most of the developing countries are in the tropical region, and tropical region hosts majority of frogs. So the biodiversity on the tropics is a lot more than, say, temperate world. And the other thing is also that they have like a number of threats, and all of these threats are somehow affecting the frogs that we have in India as well. So there's pollution, which is a side effect of human activities. There's loss of habitat. There are road mortalities. There's pet trade, not so common in India particularly, but food trades in a couple of states are very common, like Goa, Kerala, and I think parts of Northeast. Then there are also invasive species that have threatened the species, that the native species in a particular habitat. Like in Andamans, I think bullfrogs are known to be invasive. Then there's this very interesting disease that you might have heard of if you have watched any documentaries. Like no frog documentary is ever complete without mention of chytrid disease, which has caused almost 300 species of frogs to go extinct. So or at least disappear, and then they sort of at times bounce back because of conservation efforts. But but chytrid fungus has sort of caused disappearances of species of more than 250 to 300 frogs in the world. And then last, you have, of course, climate change, which is linked to the presence of chytrid fungus as well. So in India particularly, we do not see so much of an impact of climate change because we're more of a stable climate, especially in terms of what amphibians are facing. But yeah, I think eventually we would find some or the other, link between how temperatures are changing and how amphibians are adapting or not adapting to it. And I think that would be the case with the dancing frog as well. So I think till now I have like convinced at least some of y'all that frogs are really cool animals. Like if there were anybody who thought that frogs weren't cool and they're not yet convinced, then please let me know. Because there's more coming in. And I'm also going to give you like 1 minute to just think of any questions that you have and you want to flag before I move on to the projects that I am a part of.
So Madhushree, when you were mentioning that you will be having these frogs on your campus, I wanted to tell you that it's not very good news, but we have only 6 to 7 species on the campus. Microhyla we have documented, and even Indian balloon frog also. So that way it's a good documentation, but otherwise not much of a diversity. So one thing I could say that because we don't have areas for breeding, so place to these stagnant pools or these kind of habitats, because everywhere concrete roads and buildings whatever have come up. We do have a forested patch, but I think they need, as you mentioned, laterite plateaus and more of a stagnant pool kind of things, right? Area. So those are getting less and less in our campus. So what can be done on that thing?
Yeah, I think like I haven't lived in Pune for a really long time, but what I've seen is that there's a lot of like concretization and maneuvering of gardens, and like um there's just no natural space anywhere. It's very similar to what we see in Manipal as well in Karnataka. So that's also a university town, and what happens is that in this whole beautification agenda that people have, they often end up putting like lawns or gardens that are highly manured, and these gardens are not biodiversity friendly at all. So
Yes.
I think the first sort of the target is obviously frogs because they don't know what to do. But then there are some species that get adapted, like for example bullfrogs or common toads, that
Mm.
you will find and that get adapted to it. And that's
Yes.
also because they're more they're not as vulnerable and their needs are very generic. So species that are very generalist will get adapted, like the menas or crows in the bird world.
Mm.
So that's what happens when there's like additional maneuvering going on in a particular habitat. And that, I think, I've seen like too much here. I've seen too much of it in Manipal as well. And that's just because these lands are considered as wastelands, so nobody takes plateau very seriously. But an interesting thing is that I think there should be more species in your
Mm.
campus, in
Mm.
even in Pune, I think, where
Mm.
there are lateritic plateaus, because similar plateaus are seen in Manipal, and we see almost 19 species of frogs over there, almost 19,
Oh,
20.
wow.
So that's like more than double the number over here. So I think it just needs like more
Okay.
observation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think we will, professionally invite you for helping us in surveys in the next monsoon, or you tell us which is the best season or month to, explore frog amphibian diversity. Hmm?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
monsoons.
yeah. Thank you.
So let's move on to a couple of projects that I want to. How much time do I have more?
I think we can
You,
continue for a while.
Like I can go on speaking.
yes, yes, you have 25 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk about the Dancing Frog project, which I'm a part of, and the Dancing Frog is actually really popular among filmmakers because it dances and all that. So it's a frog that is evolutionarily distinct and globally endangered, like I already mentioned. This is the scientific name of the frog, and the Kotigahe dancing frog is the one that we're talking about. There are a total of 24 dancing frogs in India, and most of them perform this kind of a foot flagging behavior, that where if it senses that there's another male on that same rock, it will sort of do this visual signaling where it extends its hind limb alternatively to signal that, hey, I'm a stronger one over here and this is my territory. And the other thing is that it could also be to sort of signal the female that I'm the stronger one, so you should probably mate with me. So and the reasons, one of the reasons why this form of a signaling or this form of a dance has emerged is because they live in in areas which are very, very noisy. Like they live in fast flowing streams, so there's the constant noise of the stream water flowing over the rocks, and then audio signaling, just calling, wouldn't be enough, so they had to develop something else. And this is a form of visual signaling that they develop so that they can establish their territory and continue their survival behaviors, like mating, for example, and impressing the female. So this is how the dance looks like, and then obviously you can imagine why it's so popular among filmmakers. So I'm going to show you a quick little video of how it actually performs. The sound of the dancing bird.
Madhushree, we can't see the video.
Can't see the video?
No.
Ma'am, I can see it pretty clearly.
No, ma'am, I can see.
You can see?
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'll just play again. So like you saw in the video that the environment is really, really noisy, right? So even if you were, and there are cicadas calling in the background, then there's the flowing stream, there's rain, obviously. So there's like so much noise around in the environment where the dancing frog lives, that it's really difficult for it to actually just call and attract mates. So we think that this is one of the reasons why they have developed this form of a visual signaling. So along with the call, there's also another feedback that is going to the rival males that are there in the habitat, and also to the female, to sort of attract her and um, go ahead with the mating and the breeding activities. And also, like, the number of the males versus the number of females in amphibians is pretty much skewed. So you have very few females compared to the number of males. So you might have 4 or 5 male frogs, visual signaling each other and doing the territorial dance, but there's only one female to impress, and that female is going to mate with only one male. So there's always that competition between amphibians, and it's true for most of the species. Like, the number of females is very, very less compared to the number of males in amphibians. Now we are just going to talk about a little bit about the habitat where the dancing frog lives and why it's so important that this frog is conserved and that this frog is, spoken about. So it's a good thing that filmmakers take interest in the dancing frog. So this is a particular habitat where you would find the dancing frog. These are basically low elevation, moist evergreen forest of the Western Ghats. You can actually see in this photo that how these forests that are on the foothills of a particular mountain are more like evergreen forests with larger trees. And then as you move to the peak of the Western Ghats, you see something called as the Shola grasslands. And these are usually the places where freshwater streams emerge. And as you must be knowing that most of the river system that exists in the southern India is because of the presence of the Western Ghats. And most of the rivers actually originate from the Western Ghats and then feed the whole of the peninsular India. And the dancing frog particularly lives in these streams that are originating from the peaks and then flowing downwards. So these are basically moist evergreen forest where the frog is found in the freshwater streams of these frogs. So you can see how vast the evergreen forests are where the dancing frog is. And I'm using my advisor as a scale just so that you know that the vastness of this. And you can see a stream over here down, right? It's flowing under the railway track. And these are the areas where we usually go to sample. So he's standing on the shola, the peak I showed you, and there's a stream below which is going downstream. And as you move downwards from the shola towards the evergreen forest, you will find these kind of streams that flow. And these are basically places where the dancing frog lives. And there are, of course, other species like this one, but let's just forget about snakes. And if you see these rocks over here, the rocks in the center of the streams, those are the places where the dancing frog lives. And if you zoom in closer and closer, you would see over here that there's a tiny little frog sitting here, and there's one over here as well. So so this is basically the place where it lives. And through this is obviously a scientific map, but I didn't have a choice. So this is the boundary of the Western Ghats, and you see that these points that you see over here, the ones in pink, are the points where we've actually found the dancing frog through this project that I was a part of. So we found almost 8 to 9 new sites of the dancing frog, which was earlier known only from one site. Now it's known from so many different sites in the Western Ghats itself. And you can see that these are all primary streams, or what we call the first order streams. So these are basically streams that are originating from the peak of the mountains, and they're extremely they're just rainwater. That means the freshest form of water that you would ever see in the Western Ghats. You could possibly even drink that water. It's somehow potable, but then there's a lot of industrial waste that flows into the streams of these Western Ghats, so it's not really potable. But yeah, the point being that they're really, really freshwater animals, so any form of industrial waste could potentially damage them. And what you can also see is that the elevation. So if you move from the Arabian Sea towards the mountains, the elevation grows rapidly, and then all the green part that you see over here is more than 500 to 1,000 meters elevation. That's where you find the dancing frog. So you do not find them below 450 sort of meters above the mean sea level. So the elevation that Western Ghats has in itself is also very important for the survival of the species. Another interesting thing about the dancing frog is that it was discovered sometime around when India got independence. And the first live tadpole of this particular species was seen in 2020, when I thought I will do a project with ZSL. So it's that much how we backwards we are when it comes to science of amphibians, that a frog that was described long back is the tadpoles of that particular frog, and the eggs of that particular frog are being discovered now in 2020. So this just to show you the state of sort of scientific studies that we have done, and the amount of funds that we have for amphibian research for a species that is so important. But but obviously, like we do not even know the basics of that particular species. So these are of course like plates from a paper that we published recently, and somebody asked me about amplexes in the beginning. So this plate number A that you see over here is basically dancing frog in amplexes. So this is basically a position that they take before egg laying happens. And the plate B over here that you can see, there's a little frog around here. I don't know if you can see the arrowhead. So that's the female, and this is the male. The male has separated, and the female is laying eggs on the gravel of the freshwater stream that we have. So this is basically a pair that is immersed in freshwater stream, and you can see how fresh it is by like there's no moss, there's nothing there, and you can like absolutely see the whole body of the frog. And if you like remove some of the gravel on, then you can also see the eggs in plate number C. And then after some 16 days, we went back to the same place to check what has happened with the eggs. And then we found these, live tadpoles over there. So they were also living under under the gravel. So this is what happens if you do not manure the landscape. If the landscape is as natural as it can be, then activities like these, breeding activities and survival activities of most animals, are linked to that form of a natural setup. So I guess now somewhat amplexus is clear. In the Rana frog, the male frog is a lot tinier. It's almost the female is almost 5 to 6 times bigger, and the male frog is a lot tinier. So the male holds the frog in here in the lower limbs. So it's basically sitting in a very awkward position at the back of the female, because the female is that big and the male frog is that tiny. So that's the form of a disadvantage which is seen only in old world frogs. Now, what is happening with the habitat is that there are a lot of projects that are coming up in the Western Ghats. And as you know, that India is moving towards great trillion economy. So they are doing a lot of infrastructure building. And this is sort of a picture that we see when we are actually moving towards, sampling. So there are like these huge cranes and trucks that are a part of that habitat now, and these are basically just cleared lands. And then you can see there's a tar road behind. So they make these access road to sort of go and whatever, clear the patch for whatever infrastructure that they're going to come up with, or even a river linking project for that matter. So so this is sort of a habitat that we see, and these are all, that's the same habitat that I showed you earlier, but now there's a lot of debris there because there's a massive river linking project coming in, or there's some form of a road coming in or something coming in. And this is what happens all the time. So obviously there's increased industrial waste, there's increased debris, there's less of canopy cover, and of washing out of the evergreen forest where the frog lives. So that's pretty much the project that I needed to talk about. And this is about malformations in amphibians. This is a first of its kind project in India, particularly where we're looking at frogs being malformed because of several things like a disease or trauma or whatever. So this is a Nyctibatrachus, and you can see that a night frog is what we call it. Again, this frog is also found in a similar habitat like the dancing frogs, but you see that the hand of the frog is broken, and it could be because of various things, like we don't know. It could be because of industrial waste, it could be because of a fungus, it could be because of anything. So there are different kinds of malformations. So what we mean by malformation is basically just an abnormality that happens in a particular amphibian, and it could be like an absence of hand, or the skin could be damaged, or the head could be damaged, the eye could be damaged, anything. So that is called a malformation or an abnormality, basically. So we are documenting those, and there have been several documentations in the past. It's also part of my PhD right now. So these are some of the malformations that we have documented from the lateritic plateaus. And the one that we showed you previously was from the moist evergreen forest. So they are linked to, increased amount of human activities in a particular natural habitat. So if you see a frog that is particularly not, does not look normal, you can go to the India Biodiversity portal and look for male frogs, and then just upload a photo of that particular frog on the on that group, and that will allow scientists like me to look at, where these frogs are found and what's exactly happening in that particular landscape. So that is one of the citizen science program that we are running right now. And then the third project that I want to talk about is, obviously, like I said, it's called the Frogs of Manipal, and it's the campus of Manipal is very similar to I think the Symbiosis campus, because I did speak to a couple of people, and when our paper was published from Manipal, a lot of people told me that, oh, Pune also has these lateritic plateaus, and they're also, we possibly see a lot of frogs. So you must be similar to this kind of a landscape, which is a natural lateritic landscape, but then it is categorized as a wasteland, so nobody takes it seriously. But we have documented about 19 species of frogs from these particular landscapes, and almost 3 of them are endangered, and 9 of them have been not evaluated. So we do not have enough information about the frogs that live in these so-called wastelands. But a good thing is that these wastelands are actually part of the Western Ghats. So they are, plateaus that have probably evolved for more than 500 million years. And then the animals that you see there might also have some links to evolution, like Indiranas, for example, which are really old world frogs that we find on the lateritic plateaus. And the other interesting thing about the lateritic plateaus is that they have different kind of microhabitats. So basically, microhabitat is a part of the same habitat, but it has a different environment altogether, which supports a lot of species, like the pools that are formed. So here you can see in plate number A that there's a small pool that is formed, and that puddle will stay there for 6 months of monsoons, but then it'll just dry out in summers. And so a microhabitat is basically just a part of a bigger habitat, and in the microhabitat you find frogs. So what happens is that when you do a lot of manuring, you do not think of these microhabitats, and then suddenly there's like this pool is converted into a lake, and that lake does not support frogs. So here you can see a bigger picture of different 3 kinds of microhabitats that are there. There are these mud roads, then there is this grass patch which will support different kind of animals, and then you have this shrub forest which also supports different kind of animals. So here at least you would find almost 8 to 9 species of amphibians. And the same thing that I was showing you in plate number A over there is this pool. This is a freshwater pool. If you put your hand inside this pool, you will be able to see till the base of the pool. Like, I have swum in this. So it's that fresh. And what we found in our study site is that, now if you just look at this bar graph over here, it's really simple. You see the one in green, just look at the A side, it's site number A, and you see that in the green bar, you see there are a number of habitats. So there are 6 different habitats in this particular site, and the number of species that are found in this site are almost 13. So 6 different microhabitats support like 13 species of frogs. And if you look at say this site number F, where the number of microhabitats is less, so the number of microhabitats is only 4, so the number of species is also less. So what we see is that most of the frogs are dependent on these little microhabitats that we do not take seriously and that nobody knows about. But this is a trend that we've seen in most of the lateritic plateaus, and that's why lateritic plateaus are really, really important, the way they are, not the manured ones, but the way they are, where you find the number of species that are linked to different kinds of microhabitats that are there. So this is the plate from the publication itself. These are the amount of frogs that we see on the lateritic plateaus of Manipal. And if you want to know, I could tell you the names of it, but forget it. They're all nice and colorful species. They're different species. This is a toad. The one that you see on plate number I is a frog that lives underground for most of its life, and then it comes out only for breeding. And then you have all of these other colorful frogs as well. You have the Malabar gliding frogs, all of these tree frogs, which are very interesting, that live in the shrub forest that I'd shown you. the plate number L, that is also another fossorial frog, which comes out only in monsoons for breeding. Otherwise, it's just underground. And then you have this golden frog that lives on the paddy field. So I showed you the shrub lands and the paddies that are there. So paddies often just are freshwater pools that are formed in monsoons, and this particular frog breeds there as well. Yeah, so I'm just going to finish by telling you that it's really important that people like you and students like you actually participate in activities that enable science to progress. So you could probably come up with your own way of documenting frogs and documenting the habitat where you live in, and keep seeing the change year by year so that you know what's happening. The other thing is also that the thing that we did in Manipal University, that we were able to find almost 19 species of frogs, was also because there's a steady supply of students over there. So we had, every Sunday and Saturday, we used to have some frog walks that we did with the students. And that allowed us to sort of document that many amount of malformations and that many amount of species of animals in the university itself. So this is something that is replicable almost everywhere in India, and these activities are restricted only to monsoons. So it's really a nice change to walk in monsoons and find different kind of animals. The other thing is that India Biodiversity Portal has a lot of other citizen science program going on, one of which is Malfrogs, which I'm associated with, and the other one is a Frog Watch that is also going on, where they're documenting the tree toad. So you could also look at these portals and see if you can participate, because that directly helps scientists to get information from responsible citizens and students, and that really helps us sort of progress science in a way. So I would definitely say that if you have time and if you're interested, you could definitely participate in this. You don't have to make like career changes, but you could just work at whatever is in your hand with whatever resources you have. Right? Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, let me know.
So, Madhushree, this is Shilpa. It was a really wonderful, nice presentation and talk. And I must say, the last slide which you showed with the suggestions is completely, apt for our own biodiversity cell work, which is happening in the campus. I really need a steady supply of students, and then only even I can do whatever work is going on. And as I mentioned in the starting, that we have very, very less work happen on frogs. So I would definitely would love to have you, if you can, or you can help us or guide us during this monsoon in 2021 to understand our frog diversity of the campus. And students, at least those who are from Pune, and today they are listening to this session, please join biodiversity cell work in the month of monsoon. Those who love monsoon, let's take this opportunity to understand frogs also. So if anyone has any question, please go ahead. Which record, what kind of record, Raksha, you're asking for? Okay, recorded session. We are going to upload it on YouTube soon, the previous ones and even this one. And are you a student of Symbiosis? You can open your audio, and you can talk instead of writing it here.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm a forestry student actually from Karnataka.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I've been attending your, I've been seeing your sessions in Instagram. So I just attended today.
Okay, that's
It was wonderful.
good. So Raksha, if you want to listen to previous sessions, soon we will be uploading our link of YouTube, and you will get to listen to other sessions also. Okay.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Raksha. So Madhushree, when you okay, go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am Pooja here. Madhushree, ma'am, you said that in amphibians there are more number of males than females. But I've also heard that in sea turtles there's this problem going on because of climate change, that there are more number of females than males. That is because of the at the time of fertilization, because of climate change, the temperature have increased, which is more favorable for the female sea turtle. So does the temperature also affect toads and frogs for the gender identification?
So I don't know so specific about gender identification among amphibians particularly. We do not have that many studies that show. And like I said, we live in more tropical environments, and it's a lot more stable environment compared to temperate regions. So what happens is that we cannot 100% say that a slight amount of temperature change is having an impact. But to tell you the results of some of the things that we have found with the dancing frog is that even 1.5 degree of change could have an impact on the dancing frog. So we've seen that, but these results are not published yet. And this is something very nuanced, and we do not have like that much data available on frogs to actually comment on whether the gender change is happening or not happening, when we do not know even when like 1 degree of change is actually causing it to disappear in a particular habitat or not, or even causing it some amount of effect on the frog. So we can't really say. There's very little data on this, and I think with the dancing frog it's also going to be the first of its kind where we find such things, that the temperature is actually having an impact on the frog. So it's really new for in the amphibian world to comment about it right now.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Hi, Rohit Giri. Okay, it was really nice to have people from outside of Symbiosis. So Rohit Giri, do you also work on reptiles and amphibians?
Hello everyone.
Hi Rohit.
Hello, I'm from Nepal and I'm currently studying BSc Biology, and I'm interested in herpetofauna, especially in snakes. I do rescue works in Nepal.
Okay. And you studying where, Rohit?
In Nepal.
Okay, good to have you for this session. Thank you for
I found this session from the Instagram.
Okay, good.
Thank
So
you.
any question if anyone has? Madhushree, when you had shown in that map the known documentation, can you go on that map again?
Yeah.
No, the down. Yes, 24. So new records and known records. Known are from which that the year you told, that was when, and new records since what years you mean?
So I mean that these new records are basically records where found in like 2020, 2019, and 20, where I have been a part of finding the dancing frog. But the known records, there have been a study that was published in 2014, and that was a taxonomic review. So in that taxonomic review, they have sampled in some places, right? So those places are basically previously recorded data that also we have included in our study. But the darker red dots that you see over here, all of these darker red are new sites of the dancing frog, which helps us understand that it's not restricted to like the previous 7 known records, but there are like 8 to 9 new localities where the dancing frog is found. And it might be found in other places as well, but this is just like when we sampled across the Karnataka's Western Ghats, we found newer places.
Okay.
And
And
that
it
would
is
like help in understanding the distribution of the particular species.
okay. And it is found only in Karnataka.
Yeah, like Kotigarensis is found only in Karnataka as far as we know, but it's also sampled only in Karnataka. So, like if there are more funds in the future, then we should sample across Maharashtra and other places as well to confirm that they're not found anywhere else. But like in the taxonomic review, it was confirmed. So it's not, I think they're just restricted to Karnataka's Western Ghats.
Okay. So there are other people also who are working on this frog?
Uh, Not that I'm aware of right now, but in the past there have been some people from Delhi who have worked on this frog, like in the 2014 study.
Okay. So that's really nice to know that like you are the only one who has been extensively studying this particular species. That's fantastic.
Thank
Great. And how come you were part of Manipal University?
Oh, because I studied there.
Oh,
My postgrad there. So
in physiotherapy.
yeah.
Okay, okay. So guys, you also can means it's really typical example. Like you completely switched to biodiversity and amphibian study from your physiotherapy.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That I didn't know.
Yeah.
Great, nice. Okay. So if anyone has any question, please go ahead. Otherwise, we can end the session.
Ma'am, I just have one question. Like when you go for field works, you need to have like some kind of government permission, right? So how do you get it done? Are there any procedures?
Yeah, there's a very, very long procedure. It's called Forest Department. And we have to go to them, tell them, write a proposal, explain them what we're going to do in the forest, and ask them for permission to get into these sites. I also ask them permission to handle the animals because it's an endangered species. And in the past, there have been a lot of issues with, frog samples being sent inter-country for trade or whatever. So they will ask you what you're going to do, and then they will give you a signed permit saying that you are allowed to do this much with with the frogs. So we basically just do swabs. So we have like a thing, and then we go and open the frog's mouth and take a little swab for DNA, molecular DNA, whatever analysis. And we also measure them. So I have to handle frogs. So you have to write on the permit who is going to handle the frog, which is the institute that you are associated with, and then go to the range office as well. So in that range office, you have to give your details, give the car details if you have a car or whatever field vehicle that you are using. So it's a long process. It took me 8 months to get permit for this project.
And one more important in a way, because you have completed your post graduation in physiotherapy, right?
Yeah.
And after doing that, you started working in the field of amphibian research.
Yeah.
Am I right? So, do you at any point feel like that monetarily, if I would have started my physiotherapy, I would have been, settled in my career. And now this is where you are starting, restarting, whatever, this completely different field. And in terms of survival in earning, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, wildlife has a lot less money compared to what physiotherapy had, at least in Indian context. But it's like a call that you have to take, and not like I was really good at physiotherapy or I was earning like a lot of money there. So it didn't make any sense for me to stick around to a career that I didn't like, and then a career where I was not doing well. So it's like I had to make a choice between whether I will be harming human lives or doing something else
Don't
completely.
tell me.
So I mean, it was just a call that I had to take. And even during my graduation, in fact, graduation and post graduation, I was volunteering with a lot of groups, on birds and wherever I could get a chance to interact with people who are working in the forest. So I would often just not take my career very seriously, not take the degree very seriously, and just roam around with like volunteer around the initiatives that I found interesting, like birding, for example. So I volunteered for a lot of birding groups. I've also volunteered with eBird and like gotten to understand their processes as well. So when I was doing my degree, I was really not studying or handling anything that I was supposed to do.
Yeah. So when you mention now eBird, I remember, students, I want to tell you that for the first time I spoke with Madhushree was 3-4 years back, when she had called me for eBird campus count, and about means registering campus and all. Yes, Madhushree, now I remembered again that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that time I was studying actually. Yeah.
yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay. So yeah, really nice having you. So yeah, I think we can end the session, Madhushree. Thank you very much. And Nikita, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Shilpa ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, Madhushree ma'am. It was really a great session. We never thought of looking at amphibians with this point of view, and exactly about frogs. Personally, I have also not seen these colors of the frogs or this much colorful frogs. And yes, on that point also, the dancing frog and that video gave us a really clear and fine image of what exactly we are talking about. We are very grateful to have you today and give us all the insights and make us understand about the things. Thank you for coming. And on behalf of Biodiversity Cell, I would thank you. And again, I'll thank Shilpa ma'am also to bring you here for this session.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shilpa ma'am, could we ask everyone to turn on their videos for a group photo?
Yes, I'm sorry, my camera is not working, though I would love to pose for this particular picture. But as Dhanush mentioned, please, those who are still here, please open your cameras. We want to take one screen, one shot. Good to see Pooja, Nick, your usual faces. Good. Done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you,
Madhushree.
ma'am.
See you again.
Thank you. Yeah. See you.
Yeah.